Hi folks, Christie here. I've recorded this short video today to talk you through the difference between open and closed hole flutes. And if you've done any reading on flutes, perhaps if you're getting ready to buy one, then you will have come across these terms. But what's the difference between these two systems? Do they have different purposes or functions? And what's best for me as a beginner player? Well, I've got two of my flutes here ready to show you to answer your questions. Now, a closed hole flute looks like this. This is also known as a Plateau system, and you can see that the keys on the body of the flute are totally solid. Pretty straightforward. An open hole flute looks like this, and these are also known as ring keys or French keys. And you can see that there's a fingertip sized hole in many of these keys. So when you play, your fingers are meant to cover the entire hole as you press down on a key. And obviously this requires some more precise finger work than on a closed hole system. Now you can actually convert these open hole flutes back to closed holes by plugging them with a little silicone plug that you would get when you purchase your flute. And you simply pop them in there, and that effectively closes that key back to being a closed hole key. So why you would do this is when you're transitioning onto an open hole system, a lot of people start with all the plugs in, and as they get used to the system and their finger placement becomes more precise, they can progressively take these out. And it's really only a temporary measure as you're learning. So now we know what they look like, but what's their functions? Why would we choose one type of system over another? That's a really good question. There's lots of debate about whether one system or the other sounds better. And overall, it's a matter of personal preference in a lot of cases. There's an argument that flute tone or the sound quality between the two systems is different. The open hole flutes allow better venting and produce a clearer tone. I would say that the embouchure formation of the player, as well as the head joint manufacturing quality and material, are two of the major factors that contribute towards flute tone. And whether it sounds good, being rich and clear and focused, or bad, which is weak or airy or noisy. And research has shown that flute tone and the definition of good flute tone is pretty subjective, as we all have very unique timbre preferences. But still, many very experienced players will swear that they can distinguish tone differences between the two systems. So the trend is that most beginner players do tend to start with a closed hole system. And it's simply because, number one, it is easier. As I mentioned before, you do need more precise finger placement with these open hole systems. If the hole is not completely covered, you get these funny in-between notes. The note doesn't come out quite right. And when you're beginning, you have quite a lot to master. You need to master your embouchure formation, breathing, posture, learning notes. I mean, the list goes on. And so quite often people start on a closed hole system and work up to that once they've got the basics of flute playing down pat. Beginners often tend to be school-aged kids as well, and they just have little hands, so these closed hole systems just work better for them. And once again, they can step up once they have more playing experience and they grow a little bit bigger. Parents of beginners or beginner players don't necessarily want to invest big bucks in buying their first flute before playing ability and commitment is established by the student. And the closed hole systems tend to be a little bit cheaper than the open holes. The open holes are a feature of the step up intermediate range flutes, and these tend to be also a step up in cost as well. Some people argue that beginners should just learn straight from the beginning the proper finger placement, and that is a totally valid argument. But cost and playability and comfort of the player also need to be considered when you're buying the right instrument for you. The current trend is that most professionals do play open hole systems. So there's this perception that perhaps open hole flutes are more superior. Keep in mind that professional players do spend a lot more money on their flutes than the average player. So they're made from more precious materials, they can have custom cut head joints, the list really goes on. And it's really a combination of all these factors, plus their finely tuned embouchure and control of that really go into producing a better quality flute tone, rather than the fact that it's simply an open hole flute. Again, on the other side of the argument, some professionals are really happy playing on their closed hole systems. They're happy with the consistent and reliable sound that they make. So the choice is really yours. There are a couple of things that you can't do on a closed hole system. You can't do these funky note effects where you can slide your finger across the hole and sort of glide or slide from one note to the other. But unless you're playing music that specifically requires these funky note effects, they're normally quite advanced, that's no reason to buy an open holed flute just in itself. So there you have it, a really quick summary of open and closed hole flutes. I hope this has helped you. See you again. Bye for now.